Welcome to the Friends of Fantasy Benefits Baseball Podcast. I'm Justin Mason, lead fantasy writer and analyst at friendsoffantasybenefits.com. Join me on this episode is Britton Allan of Triple Play Fantasy. Britton, welcome to the show.
Justin, how are you doing? Thank you for having me on. I'm very excited to be with you today and talk about all things Chicago White Sox. And I even, obviously, we're not on video, but you can see me. I've got my one and only jersey that I own, a John Danks White Sox jersey, and I'm so happy I have a reason to wear it today.
You know what? It just was absolute fate that it all came together that way, right? I just assigned you a random team, and it just happened to be your John Danks White Sox. So unfortunately, Danks no longer in the league, but I do remember drafting him for $1 in my home AL only league, and him returning a fair amount of value the 1 year I did draft him there. So I'm there with you on the John Danks love.
It's funny. I'm not a John Danks fan. So.
Oh, okay. How did you end up with the jersey then?
Well, it's a strange random story, and so me and my buddy Carl, shout out Carl. I know he's going to listen. What up, Carl? And we worked downtown together. So one afternoon, downtown Nashville, we walked down to Broadway. I don't know if you've ever been in Nashville, but Broadway Street downtown is where they have all the honky tonks and the bars and the parties and those pedal taverns where, people sit and pretend to pedal when they're really just slamming drinks and going down the road. It's pretty fun. So, it was a beautiful summer day, and Carl and I were like, I think we owe it to ourselves to go downtown on Broadway and hang out for a minute. And so we did. We went to this bar, and at the bar was a gentleman, probably around 25 years old, a young man, and he was sitting by himself having beers, and he was wearing a John Danks jersey. And for some reason, Carl and I thought that was the most random thing we've ever seen. So we weren't sitting near him, but we looked at him. We're like, I wonder at what point, when he's clearly in town for a good time to party. I'm like, at what point do you think he was in Chicago, like going through his suitcase, like, oh man, I got to get my John Danks jersey down in Nashville when I raid those honky tonks. We couldn't really wrap our heads around it, but anyway, luckily for him, he left before we had the opportunity to talk to him, get the nerve up to go talk to him. Like, why are you wearing a John Danks jersey? Like, you're not old enough to know who John Danks is. But we assume like he is like the super fan of John Danks of all time. And in his honor, we made a bet of who we were in the same fantasy league. Whoever won the league that year or finished higher than the other had to buy the other one a John Danks jersey. I happen to finish ahead, so I have a John Danks White Sox jersey because of some random dude that I never met and never will meet, but he was rocking it in Nashville that day. So shout out to that guy and John Danks.
That is a completely random story.
That is literally the most random story you're ever going to hear, but when else am I going to get the opportunity to tell my John Danks random White Sox jersey story?
I'm glad I could make your dream happen. I really am. Remind everybody where you can reach on social media, and then plug everything you do at Triple Play Fantasy.
Thank you very much. My Twitter, I post a lot of Twitter things. It's my name, BrittonAllan. That's my name, Britton Allan. And during the season, I did a podcast and YouTube videos for Triple Play Fantasy Network. Shout out D. Mendy, Doc, Art, and Marty Party, where I did, it's called 3 is a Magic Number. And I just looked at the lineups every single day to see which players were moving up, hitting 1, 2, or 3 in the order because of, maximizing plate appearances. Of course, since the season's over, there aren't any lineups to look at. So I'm on hold for that till next year, but I am talking to Joe Arico, who I met in Arizona at the Fall League, which is where I met you actually, and Danielle, and that was really great. And so he and I are talking about me starting up a podcast in the off season with the Sports Ethos Network. So hopefully I'll have that ready to go here in a week or two, but I'll have all that stuff posted on Twitter at BrittonAllan. But after that John Danks story, I'm not sure. if a whole lot of people are going to want to hear about stuff like that. But yeah, that's that. Twitter is where I post everything.
Well, Joe is going to be a guest on this series for the Toronto Blue Jays preview coming up later on in the month. So definitely stay tuned for that, and go follow Britton on Twitter, and then subscribe to that podcast when it comes out, because I'll be interested to listen for sure. Let's talk some Chicago White Sox, and we'll start behind the plate as we always do, and we'll start with Yasmani Grandal, who has just come off of his worst season as a major leaguer. Has Father Time finally caught up with Yasmani Grandal, or is this an opportunity for kind of a cheap bounce back season?
That's a great question, and you're 100% right. He had a terrible year last year. He's 34 years old. He's in the last year of a 4-year contract. He hit 202 with 5 home runs, and of course, it was injuries. He was 6 weeks on the IL, so his stock is way down. His ADP is 258. There were so many other catchers going behind him that I'd rather grab. There's Eric Haas, Christian Betancourt, and of course the ultimate super buzzy Nick Fortes with the Marlins. But Grandal did hit 23 home runs in 2021, so a bounce back when he's probably looking to get another contract. This is probably going to be his last one, if being 34 and being injured, but it is foreseeable for him to have a bounce back in his contract year. And I'm a big believer in the contract year, like what Aaron Judge did. I don't think it's a coincidence. You know what I mean? Like, I think Yasmani does have a good shot for a bounce back, but there are just other players that are drafting behind him that I like a little bit better.
Yeah, and that's the hard part, is we're at a weird point in kind of the history of fantasy baseball in which the catching position is actually pretty deep. Historically, it's been one of the worst positions. I mean, I remember being in a home league for, 15 years where if you spent more than $1 on a catcher at the draft table, people laughed at you. And now we're at a position where you can, almost have an entire one catcher league, like everybody have a really good catcher. So, I want to believe that Grandal can bounce back, but I mean, he was absolutely dreadful. I would guess he gets back close to like high teens homers, puts up a better average than he did in 2022 or than he did in 2022. But I'm also not going to like beat people up for not like taking a bounce back shot. There's just too many good other guys. You named a couple of them. I really like Fortes as one. And so it's totally fine passing up on old man Grandal and kind of going a different direction. What about the backup Sevi Zavala? Like, is he a guy that you're interested in at all?
No, 0.0. He's been up and down from AAA to the major leagues pretty much every year since 2019. And it's a small sample size, but he started or played in 103 games. He's had a total of 7 home runs. His batting average is pretty decent. It's 270, and that's nice. But other than that, he just really hasn't shown anything. And there's a reason to keep an eye on him because Grandal most likely is going to be injured at some point. But no, I would pass on Selby.
Let's move into the infield. Talk about Andrew Vaughn, who has been a pretty popular player. People are really, really excited now that Jose Abreu's gone. He's going to be a full-time just first baseman. We'll have to worry about awful defense in the outfield. He's a former top prospect, former top pick for MLB. I'm wondering if the hype is a bit unwarranted considering what we've seen on the field. What are your thoughts on Andrew Vaughn?
I actually, when I was writing some notes for this, I was listening to your podcast on Sleeper in the Bus with Paul Sporer. Y'all kind of dissed Andrew Vaughn a little bit with your rankings, and I have to say, I think he's going to be very good. I don't think he's going to like replace Jose Abreu's production by any means, but I think it'll be close. And here's why: because if you look at his StatCats page, his max exit velo, average exit velo, and hard hit rate are elite. I mean, his hard hit rate is in the 90th percentile in a league full of men who are trained to hit that ball as hard as they can. And he is one of the best at it. And he's a young man at his age. He's got room to grow. You know, he was the third in round one, the third overall pick. I mean, he has got the pedigree, the underlying stats back it up. And so the only drawback I can think is that while his underlying metrics are mostly red, his walk rate is kind of what I think, you know, kind of gives you a pause. It's ice blue. He walks at a 5% clip. And the problem with that is it's down. He walked 8% in 2021, but unfortunately he's walking less than he did. So that kind of gives you a red flag. But the other good news is that he reduced his strikeout rate significantly from 21.5% to 17%. So that looks good. So he's making some strides there. He's hitting the ball hard. He's an elite power hitter. He's going to have full-time at-bats at first base with Abreu gone. So if you miss out on those top-notch guys, obviously Alonso, Vlad Jr., and even those second-tier guys that, you know, we all kind of love, Nathaniel Lowe in Texas being one of them. But if you, for whatever reason, you miss out on those guys, I think Andrew Vaughn is somebody that's got the playing time. He hits the ball hard, and he's going to have a prime spot in that lineup. The other guys that are going around him at his ADB, which is 150, which isn't, you know, you're not getting a break at that price. But I also like Ty France and Jose Miranda. But the reason why I would draft Andrew Vaughn is because in NFBC, he's also got outfield eligibility, which those guys don't. So that's when you're talking about, you know, 50 round draft and hold, and you can get a guy that can be first, corner, and outfield. That's good in a draft and hold like that. So that's why I like Andrew Vaughn.
Yeah, I understand the arguments for him. Here's the arguments against. It's a lot easier to hit the ball hard the way Andrew Vaughn has been hitting the ball when it's on the ground. And his launch angle is under double digits, which tells me he ain't hitting a lot of home runs until he fixes kind of the path through the zone with that swing. And so until we see him start to be able to lift that ball, I don't know that he's going to have the big breakout that people are starting to pay for. Like you said, pick 150 isn't cheap. Like, he's not going outside the top 200 where he probably should be going. It hurts me because I really like Andrew Vaughn. And, you know, funny story, my wife works with his father because he went to high school within walking distance of my house. But
this betrayal?
Yeah, even with all that stuff, until I see him lift that launch angle, there's no way I can, you know, because when you're taking a guy at that point, you want him to carry you in power, right? You want him to have 30 home run potential. He doesn't have 30 home run potential right now. He's got maybe, you know, low to mid 20s. And that's fine, but like, I can get that anywhere. So I'm not gonna, I want a guy with a little bit higher upside. I'll definitely take Ty France. I feel I have the same issues with Jose Miranda too. So Jose Miranda is another guy who I'm kind of avoiding in drafts right now because I think the combination of Miranda's and Andrew Vaughn's prospect pedigree now having a full-time role is inflating their draft costs, and I'm not going to pay for that.
That's a great point. And like you said, not to be a dead horse, but yeah, you're not getting a discount on Andrew Vaughn. Everybody's going to hop on that bandwagon with Jose Abreu gone and, you know, his top prospect pedigree. So
it's just going to get worse too. Yeah. I mean, he'll probably be in the top 120 by the time we get to like the big money drafts in March. Is Rami Gonzalez actually going to be their starting second baseman, and do we care?
No, he's if you look at roster resource, he is currently their starting second baseman, and I don't know why, but he started 25 games at second base last year, and he had and I know that's a really, really small sample size, but his walk rate was 1.8% with a 238 batting average, 2 home runs, no stolen bases. And the reason why he got called up so quick, his star, I was looking at his minor league, man, he shot up like a rocket in the minors, because in 2021 in Double-A, he went 20-20 in only 78 games. I mean, he was like breaking the minor system. So they raced him through AAA, and then so they rushed him up to the major leagues, and he just got overwhelmed essentially. So, and even if he does stick at second base, let's say he has a great spring training, they don't, there's nobody else competing with him. Even if he starts, he's going to hit at the bottom of the order, like literally at the bottom. And he does have 2 options left. So if he struggles, they are going to send him back down in a New York minute and maybe try to re-sign Elvis Andrus or something like that. But yeah, I think you can safely pass on Rami Gonzalez.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing he does really, really well at, and that's strikeout. And that's not something fantasy teams. So I would assume that they will bring somebody else in, like a Jose Iglesias, and Elvis Andrus could definitely be the type of guy, maybe even like a Jurickson Profar or someone like that. Somebody with some second base experience, a Donovan Solano, like one of those kind of names. Like, there's no way he's going to be their everyday second baseman to start the season. I'd be extremely shocked if he was. Maybe like a Rougned Odor or Cesar Hernandez, like someone's coming in to play that position.
You're exactly right, and they better start making calls because the Boston Red Sox are going to be looking for somebody looking for the in those same names too with the Trevor Story news.
Yeah, the Boston Red Sox may have me play shortstop for them this year, so we'll see. We'll see how that works out.
What a disaster!
Let's talk about Tim Anderson because he's one of my favorite players in Major League Baseball, but he also has a really, really hard time staying on the field. Is he worth his draft cost considering we've now had 4 straight seasons where he's missed considerable time?
Yeah, I'm with you. I love Tim Anderson too. He's a fun player. He's exciting. Remember when they played that Field of Dreams game and he hit that home run to walk it off? His teammates love him. But again, you hit the nail on the head. It's the health issue. He's 29. He'll turn 30 this year, mid-season. So he played only 79 games last year, 6 home runs, 13 stolen bases, which you extrapolate that out, you can see a 2020, if not better season. But the last time he came anywhere remotely close to a full season was 2018. That was a long time ago. And he went 20-26 in that season. And like Andrew Vaughn, like his ADP is 97. I mean, you're not getting him all that cheap. And there are some shortstops going behind him that I like a little bit better. Ahmed Rosario, Jeremy Pena, and Nico Horner. I like all those guys a little bit better than Tim Anderson just because, he had that groin strain in the summer. He was out for like 6 weeks, and then he had finger surgery in August. So a lot of these little dings are adding up. And, as we get older, it doesn't get easier. So, yeah, I would pass on Tim Anderson.
Yeah, I think you got to be really careful, too, with guys like him when you look at projections. If you look at, like, Steamer's projection for Tim Anderson, and they have him for 646 plate appearances. He has never had 646 plate appearances in his career. Right. Like, it just has never happened. We're not talking about a guy who's, like, brand new and young. Like, he there's no way he's getting probably to even 600 plate appearances. He had 551 in 2021, and that was his high watermark since that 2018 season you were talking about. I love Tim Anderson. I'm not taking him off my boards, but it just seems really, really unlikely he's going to go on a lot of my teams. I think in shallow formats, if you're playing in a 10-team league, it makes sense to go for a guy like Tim Anderson because he does have upside and there's replacement value. But the deeper you get into your leagues, if you're playing in a 12 or a 15 or, God forbid, a deeper league than that, you got to start really pivoting to options that are going to compile stats. And if he's not on the field, he can't compile stats.
Yeah, he's one of those guys, if you were in a 50-round draft and hold, if you did draft him, you'd have to back him up. With somebody a lot more solid, maybe less exciting, but it's just one of those things. Like there is no indication whatsoever that he's going to turn 2023 and a 2018. Like, you have to get the flux capacitor going with the gigawatts and, Dr. Brown and in the storm. And unfortunately, I just don't see that happening with the way he plays, just, all out.
Yeah, I agree. Is Yoan Moncada broken?
Yes, 100%. So his most productive year was 2019. And in that year, he hit 25 home runs. Okay, that's good. But that's nothing special from a third baseman, right? He's never done anything close since. So, 2019, 25 home runs, and the rest are in the teens. Yoan Moncada was like riding off name value. I think he was drafted by the Red Sox so, he's been a big name. I think he released a rap album or something a few years ago.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I was like, this guy's just doesn't care. He got his contract, and of course, I don't know the man. For all I know, he's the hardest working person in the world, but the production's just not there. And we're talking about, and I know third base isn't great, but you can do better on where you have to draft Yoan Moncada. So I would pass on him.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously not being drafted very highly anymore, but like people lived off of that prospect pedigree for way too long. At some point, you have to show it on the field. And like I said, he hasn't shown anything since 2019. And the worst part about it is he stopped running too. Like it just, you used to get like 25 home runs and 10 stolen bases. Now you're getting like 12, 13 home runs and 2 stolen bases. And just there's no value in that. Could he turn it all around? Absolutely. He's only 27 years old. He has dealt with a number of injuries over the years. But I need to see something first before I'm willing to take a gamble on a guy like that.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Any interest in Jake Burger, Lurie Garcia, anybody else in that infield?
Not really. Jake Burger's kind of interesting because he's a power guy. He hit 8 home runs in 51 games, but he's a former first-round pick, and his story is kind of interesting too. He lost a bunch of time in the minor leagues with an injury, and I'm rooting for him because he's come back and he's on a big league roster, and good for him because he had a rough road even as a first-round pick coming up through the minors. But he's a bench bat, and if Moncada gets injured, then he may play every day. But yeah, so if he's maybe worth a late-round flyer, but absolutely not worth a late-round flyer is Lurie Garcia. I mean, he's a switch hitter, no speed, no power, 0 upside.
I wonder if maybe Jake Burger becomes their option at second base. He played 3 games there last year. I don't know that he is built for it necessarily, but he can play there, I guess, in a pinch if they just decide they're just going to stay in house and not spend any more money. He could be the guy that they go with. And he does have power. And you're right. He has like been the most snake bitten guy. He makes, Mitch Haniger look lucky. He tore his Achilles, and while he was rehabbing that Achilles injury, he tore his other Achilles. Yeah. Like it's just unreal bad luck. He's a guy that I would take a gamble on late in a DC, or at least put on my watch list in your regular leagues and stuff like that. And if it does look like he's going to get a full-time role, he could be a little bit interesting. There's not much speed at all in the profile. He's never stolen a base at any level, right? So, but I think there's 30 home runs in that bat if he were to get full-time playing time. The question would be, could his average stay above 240? I think it probably can. So I think, it's a guy to keep an eye on, especially in your deeper formats.
That's a gregreat point. And I've actually, since I've been doing some research, I've circled him. I've circled another guy even bigger that we'll talk about in a minute, but Jack Burger, a late round, and I'm talking like round 40, in a DC. I think, he's one injury away from full-time at bats and can pop 25, 30 home runs from somebody you can draft really late.
Speaking of a guy who's been snake bitten with injuries, Luis Robert is coming at a little bit of a discount this year. Not a huge discount, but a little bit of one. Are you buying back in on Luis Robert?
Yes, this is the guy. This is the guy. Mark this down. This is so exciting. You're getting a 3rd, 4th round draft pick for a true first round talent, elite hard hit rate. Yes, he had some injuries. He had a wrist injury that he ended the year on, But I think that's a good thing. I mean, not a good thing that he was injured, obviously, but a good thing that they didn't press it, they didn't push it. They were like, okay, it's September, August, whatever it was. You just rest up, and we'll see you next year with the new manager and all the new attitude, new players, and all that kind of thing. You rest up. So you're getting this 25-year-old super stud with power, speed, capabilities that typically, you could get at the end of a 15-team, DC now at a discount. I love this. This is a draft day steal. I underline it, circle it. His hard hit rates. He looked good last year when he played, but yeah, he did have that wrist injury. But there's absolutely no reason to think that at 25 years old, he won't be fully ready to go for spring training in the season. And his projections are, also wonderful. And actually, I was in a 12 team. It's an NFBC 50. He got drafted in the 5th round.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is amazing. Yeah, this is the guy. I think this is going to be one of the steals of draft champions leagues this year.
I think this may be the first year since Luis Robert came into the league where I'll actually have him on some teams, because the price has dropped where it's now reasonable, right? I feel like he was overdrafted as like a late 1st round pick previously, especially because of the injury history. We're talking about a guy who last year was the first time he ever got to 400 plate appearances, got to 401 before they shut him down for the season. There is risk. And if you're in a league where there isn't going to be much replacement on the waiver wire, and you'll hear it over and over and over again all draft season, outfield depth is horrible. It is atrocious. So if you're in a 5 outfielder league, especially a deep one, you may want to skip him for other guys, because I don't know how you can pencil in more than like 500 plate appearances for him. However, that being said, there's a ton of power and there is a ton of speed. Like, he could legitimately be a 25-25 or a 30-30 guy, even in just 500 plate appearances. We saw in less than 300 plate appearances, him go 13-6 in 2021 with a 338 average. The average is going to be really, really fluky year to year. He does not have a great approach. He makes a lot of contact, he made a lot of contact in the zone, which is what you want to see. He also swings outside of the zone like 40% of the time. He has like a 15% swinging strike rate, which means that there's no way that strikeout rate stays at 20% like it has the last 2 years. It's going to be closer to 30%. But that's okay, because he could probably go 25, 260, and you'll be pretty damn happy with him in the 4th or 5th round. I'll be okay with that.
Oh yeah, I would love it if I could start a DC like picking 7th or 8th, somewhere in there, and get Ohtani 1st round, Bichette 2nd round, and then Robert in the 3rd round. And yeah, I hear you about the injuries, but if he's one of those that has literally superstar potential that you can get in the 3rd or 4th round of a DC. I think he's really exciting.
Speaking of superstar potential but can't stay healthy, Eloy Jimenez there was an early report early in the offseason that they told him to leave his glove at home, that he was only going to DH. And now there's a report out that said, hey, no, bring your glove. You might play a little bit in the field. The differences between those two reports for me mean a lot. He's a guy who has been constantly injured, and a lot of it has happened playing out in the field or just in fluky moments. He got hurt celebrating Lucas Giolito's no-hitter, pulled a calf muscle.
Yeah, he did.
So I would much rather see him as a full-time DH, like they said they were going to do earlier on in the offseason, than him playing the field like they're saying now. Where are you at on Eloy Jimenez?
I'm in on Eloy Jimenez because they're going to have Benintendi in the left field. They're going to have Robert in center, and they're going to have some combination of Gavin Sheets. He's a lefty bat, and so I'm not sure who he platooned with in right field. So I think Eloy's. I think those reports are just kibosh, erroneous. There's no way they're going to make this guy run out there in the field after what's been going on the past couple of years. Did you look at his steamer projection by any chance?
I have not, but I'm sure it's beautiful.
Let me tell you what Steamer thinks about him with full-time DH bats. 32 home runs is what they're projected for Eloy Jimenez as a full-time DH. Yeah, okay, that sounds good. And plus, he's going to be batting fourth. He's going to be batting cleanup, and you know how I feel about Lewis Robert, even though his kind of shine is worn off a little bit too. But I think now that La Russa's gone, I think this team is going to be energized. I really do. I think it's going to be, the ghost of John Danks is going to come in and sprinkle some magic dust on these guys. I think it's going to come together. I'm pretty excited about this year for the White Sox with Jimenez batting fourth, Luis Robert, and at least part of the year you're going to get Tim Anderson. These are good guys. This is a core of young, 25, 26. Actually, the oldest guy is Benintendi. He's like 28. But you got Benintendi's Gold Glove over there in left. I think Eloy Jimenez has got a real shot, like Steamer says, to pop over 30 home runs.
Oh, I think if he stays healthy, he is guaranteed 30 home runs. It's all about health with Eloy Jimenez. And I think the batting average could be anywhere from like 270 to 290, driving a ton of runs. It's all about health. And so it comes down to your risk assessment. Are you willing to take the risk on a guy like Eloy? Because the upside is huge. He could legitimately hit 40 plus. In a full season's worth of plate appearances. He hit 31 and 504 plate appearances in his rookie season in 2019. We know there's a ton of power in there. We saw him lead the league in isolated power in the second half, I believe. He's a stud when he's healthy. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy. So
yeah, you're 100% right. And you can't, you at home or listening can't hear me, but I'm doing my fingers up like this. Like all indicators are pointing up for Eloy Jimenez, including I know the loss of Jose Abreu from a clubhouse standpoint is significant, but Eloy's the leader now. Like he's the heart and soul. I'll tell you, it ain't Yohan Moncada, that's for darn sure. You know what I mean? So he's the leader, and I think he's going to take charge of this team and just roll with it.
You talked about Andrew Benintendi signing a deal there. He gets a long-term deal. How much do you care about him in fantasy, though? Because he's kind of punchless at this point.
Yeah, I don't. The most home runs he's ever hit is 20, and you can't do that. You can't have an outfielder whose roof is 20 home runs. That's not going to get you where you need to be in your fantasy league, or those numbers that you need to hit. Now, in real life, he's good. Like I said, he's a Gold Glove. He changes things in the outfield. I think he's going to make things better for the pitchers. But the thing he does help is batting average. He's always had a good batting average. He gets around 300. But just side note, why they gave him $75 million? Has anyone? Does somebody know something I don't? I mean, I know he's a good defender, and that's great. But that's the largest contract in White Sox history. It used to be a Grandal, which is close, but this is like Benintendi's the guy.
I don't get it. I mean, I like you said, he's a better real life player than he is a fantasy guy. But yeah, they overspent. But I think it reflects a little bit of the lack of outfield just in major leagues, right? We talk about in fantasy, but there's a lack of good outfield, especially good defensive outfielders that can still hit the ball in MLB. And I think this was a little bit of proof of that. I'm right there with you though on Benintendi. Any interest in Gavin Sheets or Victor Reyes?
I had a soft spot for Victor Reyes. He was a former Rule 5 Detroit Tiger. He got a non-roster invite to spring training. He's not a young guy. He's 28, 29, and he's never been able to, flash anything more than 5 home runs, 5 stolen bases, scattering like that. I like him, but, he's not on the major league roster. But Gavin Sheets is really interesting. He hit 15 home runs last year and not playing full time. That 15 home runs doesn't seem like a lot, but that was the 3rd highest on the team. And it looks like he's going to start against righties in right field. So Gavin Sheets is kind of interesting. He's 0.0 steals though. But I kind of like Gavin Sheets if really, really late.
Yeah, I'm with you on both those guys. let's move on to starting pitching and talk about Dylan Cease, who may be one of the most polarizing top tier pitchers there are this year. There are some people who are like, he's a top 3 or top 5 pitcher, and there's some people who are like, hey, I wouldn't take him in the top 20. Where are you at on Dylan Cease?
If you missed out on last year, you missed out. I think he's going to regress a little bit. It's only natural. He played. He was fantastic, especially the first half of the season. He ended up with 187 innings pitched, 227 strikeouts. Hello, that's awesome. But he did regress a little bit in the second half, which is only natural. You can't expect him to. These are big league hitters, and they're going to make adjustments. But even if he regresses a little bit to not this ace year, he's still elite. And his ADP is 37. He's going around in the Aaron Nola, Strider, Woodruff range. Frankly, I'd rather have Woodruff. I'd rather draft Woodruff or Nola, maybe even Strider. So yeah, I see where everybody's coming from, but I wouldn't ding him too bad, just based on that second half. I mean, he's an ace. He's going to be good, and if you can get him, after the Woodruff Nola tier, I mean, you're in great shape.
I am not a Dylan Cease guy this year. I think he has potential to deliver a pretty bad whip for a guy who is an ace. I really worry about his reliance on 2 pitches and what happens when he doesn't have feel for one of those. He got away with it in 2022. I just worry that, regression catches up with us all. I don't know that he's going to be able to keep it going in 2023. I'm trying to bring up my starting pitcher ranks right now. I have Dylan Cease just inside my top 20 at 19 this year.
Wow.
So, I'm pretty low on Mr. Dylan Cease. And I know your buddy Dave Mendelson is going to be screaming at me through his podcast player when he listens to this, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's right. You're going to have some people gunning for you. D. Mindy, Mike Carter. I mean,
I'm not worried about anybody who can't eat a full box of donuts.
What? I have no idea what you're talking about.
The David Mendelson lost some sort of bet and had to live stream him eating a box of donuts from Dunkin' Donuts or Krispy Kreme or something like that. And he struggled to get through the 6 donuts or whatever it was. And it's a pretty embarrassing video. Please go find it somewhere.
I'll definitely go find it, but it makes sense. I actually got to meet D. Mindy in person too, and he's a fitness guy, man.
Oh yeah, no, dude, he's shredded.
His body is going to help him out. Like I could eat 3 boxes of donuts, but my body hates me. His body loves him.
My buddy needs those 3 boxes of donuts. His body rejected the box of donuts.
What kind of donuts was it? Was it some trash Krispy Kreme? And I'm sorry, Krispy Kreme.
Whoa, yeah, no, we love Krispy Kreme. Right. I can't remember what it was. Lance Lynn had kind of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type of season where he was missed time early on and then was atrocious. But then he was one of the best pitchers down the stretch. Is he going to carry the hot second half into this year, or is he kind of back and forth because of his age?
I love Lance Lynn this season. Now, this season only, not Dynasty, obviously. He's 35 years old, but it's exactly like you said. Now, he ended up with a 3.99 ERA, 121 innings pitched, 124 strikeouts. And that was because even after he had a horrendous start to the season, like literally 7 ERA start after start after start, but then he was coming off an injury and just trying to work through it. He got blown up. But so that's what made his second half even more shocking, is because he righted that ship. And I don't know if you remember this, but I remember watching a game with him, and he got into a fight in the dugout with his own first base coach. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And Lance Lynn is a fiery competitor. That's why he's so successful and his career's been so long. And baby, he's still got that fire. And I think for this year, the second half showed he got over those injuries. He's going to have a regular regular off-season training, and he's going to beat up that first base coach if he keeps screwing up, and don't mess with my starts. I love Lance Lynn for this coming year, and plus he's not. People are kind of out on him because of what they. People remember if anybody started him with those 7 earned run starts back to back to back to back or whatever it was, they're not touching Lance Lynn with a 10-foot pole. But that's just part of the story. The story is that he was back to his regular form, and I think he's a great bargain this year. Lance Lynn is.
I do too. I'm right there with you. I have him a top 25 starter. I think he is going to put a lot of people to shame this year, even though he's 35. Take the discount on some of those guys who are established but still studs. All right, let's finish out the rotation with Lucas Giolito, Mike Clevenger, and Michael Kopech. All had disappointing seasons for different reasons, right? Giolito was just extremely hittable. Mike Clevenger just doesn't look like himself without the velocity since Tommy John. And Michael Kopech was actually pitching really well, but got injured again. Any of these guys worth targeting for you in fantasy?
Absolutely not. Lucas Giolito, I'm out. I'm done with you. No more. Mike Clevenger, I'm out. Even though he looks like Alfred E. Newman. Are you familiar with Alfred E. Newman? Do you know who that character is?
Yes, I do.
he every time I see Mike Clevenger, I'm like, weren't you on Mad Magazine? Yeah. Plus, he's got that herky jerky throwing motion. No, you could put a gun to my head, and I'm not drafting Mike Clevenger. Kopech. The reports of his off-season rehabbing are disturbing. They're saying, like, words coming out from Chicago, like the rehab is behind schedule, and he ended with a knee injury. And plus, he looks like a better reliever than a stretched out starter. He may be an elite, middle reliever, elite closer. I don't know. I don't want to draft a player that's having trouble with his knees. It's behind schedule in the off season. So I would be out on Kopech too.
Yeah, I'm actually right there with you on all these guys. If Giolito looks good in spring training, then I could come around on Giolito. And if Kopech's healthy in spring training, come around on Kopech. You could not pay me to draft Michael Clevenger at this point. I think people are still, until we see that velocity back, because if he's 91, there's no way he's going to be effective at that velocity. He needs to be back to like 95, and I need to see that first. So these are all guys that until they start pitching in spring training and I get to watch them, that they will not be on any of my teams. Now, come spring training, come World Baseball Classic time, if they're looking like old versions of themselves, I'll get interested again. But for right now, I'm out.
Yeah, 100%. And the reason why I'm off Giolito is because I drafted him everywhere last year.
He was my first round pick in the main event last year.
Yeah, and I'm only human. I can't go back to you, Lucas. Now, again, if you fall far enough, then I'm still going to pass it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's finish out with the bullpen. Liam Hendriks was diagnosed, went public with his diagnosis of cancer. We wish him well and hope that he can, get that into remission and come back to baseball if and when he wants to. What do the White Sox do in the meantime? Are they going to Kendall Graveman? And is there a backup plan if for some reason Kendall Graveman isn't good or gets hurt?
I looked back last year when Hendriks needed a rest. He pitched 3 days in a row. They consistently went to Kendall Graveman if they had a save op. The problem, and that's great for Kendall Graveman. He had 6 saves last year. Basically in relief of Hendriks if Hendriks was unavailable. The problem is that he also had 6 blown saves. Okay, so yikes. So if you're blowing 50% of your save ops, you're not going to be in that role very long. If Graveman, if he's fine and he's looking at projected at 25, 30 saves, something like that, but he just wasn't that good. So I would kind of pass on him. What I would do in a 50-round draft, maybe pass round 40 on a draft and hold, I'd take a flyer on Aaron Bummer. And just see what happens, because if Kendall as he's prone to do, if he blows saves, because he was a starting pitcher for the Athletics, like he's kind of been changed into this role. But I think Aaron Bummer would be the next guy up, and he's definitely someone that's worth a flyer late. So that would be my plan for the White Sox bullpen.
Yeah, completely agree with you. I think Kendall Graveman is first man up, but Aaron Bummer is actually the guy I probably want.
Get him so late, yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised too if the White Sox address this at some point, prior to the start of the season, like bring some crusty old veteran that is known for like just, I hope it's not Mark Melancon because he was terrible last year, but a Mark Melancon type guy to come into the ninth and close games for them. So
it could also be Reynaldo Lopez. He kind of had a resurgent season last year. They may want to keep him in middle relief or maybe a little bit of long relief, but he was hot. He was a hot name there for a couple of years, and now he's kind of found his space. Stay in your lane. I don't know if he's closer material, but he's looked good. They also have Jake Diekman, who's had a pretty good history of being an effective reliever, but so it's kind of cloudy. But I would throw my late flyer on Aaron Bummer.
Yeah, I think they want to keep Reynaldo Lopez as like a multi-inning guy, which makes sense because he was a starter. He just never could develop that third pitch, and now has been more effective in the bullpen, which I think is where he needs to be. I think he's great in a multi-inning relief role. So I think Diekman would make sense. Even Joe Kelly could make sense as a guy that. That's my big fear is that they don't want to move Aaron Bummer out of like being a really good matchups play and end up going to like one of these really old, boring guys. So, or it turns into a committee where, 2/3 go to like Joe Kelly and 1/3 go to Bummer if Graveman can't get it done. So,
and it's not like Graveman was, knocking it out of the water last year and is some type of proven closer. That's couldn't be farther from the truth. So, yeah, definitely, keep your eyes on that. But hey, before we wrap up, can I ask you about Oscar Colas? He's one of the, so when I was looking through, he's an outfield Cuban prospect. He's in AAA for the White Sox. His name's Oscar Colas, Colas, and the word's kind of out on him. He has not gone unnoticed, but he was really tearing up the minor leagues. Did you know that he is projected by Steamer? And I know these are projections, and half the time projections don't even come close. But okay, so he's projected to have 400 plate appearances in the major leagues this year.
Yeah, he could, especially if they do want to keep Eloy as a DH only guy. But he also, I think, he still needs more time at AAA. So like, I don't think there's any way he breaks camp of the team. I think he at best he's up like late May. In his short stint at AAA, he struck out like 36% of the time. There's still some pretty good swing and miss to his game. And the hit tool, it was never expected to be very good. So there is power. There's plenty of power in the profile, and he might even steal a bag or two. But the batting average is going to be a real issue if he's striking out at like above a 30% clip. And so I think he's still got to go back down to the minors and work some. There was a point in the offseason before they signed Benintendi that he was projected to be the opening day left fielder. So I think that maybe Steamer is smoking a little bit of that.
Spoken a little about that sweet Oscar Colas. His ADP right now is 510. He's projected to hit 17 home runs, but that I'm sure that was all pre Andrew Benintendi signing. He's interesting. And real quick, Justin, the other guy, Billy Hamilton. You remember old Billy Hamilton? 32 years old. That's not that old.
It's crazy. He's only 32.
He's only 32 years old. He's got a non-roster invite. He signed a minor league contract. He's going to spring training. Last year for the White Sox, he played in 37 games. Now, he only had 23 plate appearances, so obviously he was being used as a pitch hit runner, maybe defensive replacement. That man stole 10 bases. Yeah. He's third on the team last year in stolen bases. And he had 23 plate appearances. obviously that's just for fun, but keep your eye on Billy Hamilton just in case there's a rash of injuries, and
He could be Adam Engel for them. Like
he
that.
could be Adam Engel. He could come up and steal some bases, and I just love Billy Hamilton. So I couldn't resist mentioning here just on the off chance it's round 50. You're looking around and you're like, oh, I don't want any of these people. Yeah, Billy Hamilton. Yeah,
there you go.
He might get you some stolen bases.
Britton, thank you so much for joining us. Remind everybody where you can reach on social media, and then plug all your work.
I really appreciate it, Justin. Thank you so much for having me on. I love talking baseball with you. Please, at Twitter, I'm at Britton Allan, BrittonAllan, and I'm going to be starting a off-season podcast with Joe Arrico and the Sports Ethos network sometime soon. So hopefully catch me on that. And again, thank you for the time and the talk. I appreciate it, Justin.
Absolutely. You can reach me on Twitter at Justin Mason FWFB. Email me of the show, friendsoffantasybenefits@gmail.com. Doing these 30 team previews in 30 days. Make sure you get your 5-star reviews in, so that way you can be entered in to win a free RotoWare shirt. Going to give away one each month until the start of the season. We've already gotten a number of really good reviews, and we'll read them after we get through this month. Trying to get through all these pods. I want to spend every episode reading out reviews, but I do really appreciate everybody sending those out. Follow all my work over on Fangraphs, where I write daily, the Sleeper and the Bus podcast, and obviously here on the Friends of Fantasy Benefits podcast. For Britton and myself, thanks for listening. Have fantastic baseball offseason.